Okay, so if we can start just by understanding, first thing is, did you always want to work in the IT industry? And regardless of that answer, I guess, is how did you end up working in the IT industry as well?
Yeah, so I have always had in my blood, I feel like, a passion for like innovation. It's weird. I'm at like, I'm quite young still. Don't know if you'll be able to tell that, but I from when I was like 15, 16, I always had like this passion for new things. So I did marketing, graphic design, multimedia in like college when I was like 16, 17. And I found out about digital marketing and media through that, and was just so inspired by it. I wanted to figure out how businesses can use it for advertising for free, and things like that. So I think I've kind of fell into technology just from a curiosity point of view, just being interested. So when I then studied marketing at university and went down that path, I always wanted to make sure like I specialized in like the digital side of it. And then from there, I then fell into the tech industry. And I grew up in that time where it was, I don't know whether you remember MySpace and Bebo and all those social media platforms. So I wasn't on of the era of having like Facebook when I was in school, but these social media platforms were definitely around. So I used them at quite an early age. So I think that as well, and exploring like how to make your MySpace page look cool by changing the code, things like that. Like I think I just grew up in a time where this stuff wasn't used by everyone, but was starting to get used, and that definitely triggered a lot of passion in me, I suppose, for technology.
Okay, and in terms of when you left, so when you left university stuff, did you go straight into then a sort of digital marketing role? And also, can you explain how you've ended up, where you are today as well?
Yeah, so I've always worked. So since I was a kid, I worked for a taxi company. I worked in Woolworths. I just had multiple jobs. Come from a very working class family, and in university I had multiple jobs. So I worked in events. I worked in a shop while studying marketing, and one of those jobs in events was with a founder of a tech business. So they always say, don't they, go out and meet people, you never know who you're going to chat to, and then your path can kind of change depending on that. And that definitely happened to me. So when I was working in events, I met this founder of this app company, and he said, why don't you come work for us? So whilst I was in university, I worked for that firm, and it was a tech company in Liverpool. They created apps for brands like Boots and Nestle and quite big brands that I had the opportunity to work within. And that was my first, I was part-time there. That was my first job in technology. I was doing digital marketing, but I worked really closely with the founder on business development. I worked really closely with the developers and the designers and the UXers, and just was so inspired really by all of those people and their skills coming together to create something like an app. But it was there that I realized that there was a diversity problem. So when I was there, I was the only female for a long time in the office. And when I did the research, I realized that there was only around, at that time, about 17% of the workforce in the UK filled by women. And when you looked at diversity more broadly than that, when you looked at Black women, for example, it was 1%. So when I realized this, it kind of lighted a fire in my belly to do something about it. So I set up something called Liverpool Girl Geeks, which was a community in Liverpool to try and get women of all backgrounds to get inspired by technology. We put on lots of events and workshops in things like coding to upskill them. Then we realised that we had to start younger and work with people in schools. And that was when InnovateHer was launched, which I'm the founder of now. So and InnovateHer, it exists to tackle the gender imbalance within technology. We work with loads of tech businesses like PlayStation Co-op, BAE Systems. We've worked with LFC. So many businesses that either are tech or tech enabled. And we teach the next generation to consider it as a career choice, specifically working with girls. So I've kind of transitioned from working in technology myself to working on an issue that is ingrained within the tech sector, which I'm sure you have many conversations about. But then now I've transitioned to become an e-learning or education technology business founder, because throughout the pandemic, we've now changed all of our activity to deliver e-learning experiences for young people online. So I feel like I've gone a bit full circle with it. I've started in tech, and then I moved into the social enterprise space, teaching the next generation about technology along with the partners, but then eventually now becoming a tech business ourselves. So that's the journey that we've been on.
Okay, and what was the inspiration? I mean, you say obviously that first sort of IT company you worked in, you were the only female there, so that, I guess, that opened your eyes to it. But I mean, many of us would not say this similar, but come across an issue and just sort of shrug our shoulders and go, oh well, that's it, or find somewhere else to work. What was it that drove you to to actually create your business to make that difference, to address that problem that you'd come across?
I don't know. I think I've always been quite entrepreneurial since a kid. I've always wanted to do my own thing. When I worked for the person I worked for then, and then since then when I had, because I did this part-time for a long time, I probably was inspired by bad bosses, which isn't great, but I had a lot of bad bosses, and I mean, they weren't awful human beings, but I knew that I wanted to create something that was inclusive, that had a good culture, that didn't leave anyone out. And I think that inspired me a lot to be a leader of an organization that, one, can make a change within society in terms of working with these businesses to help them become better places of work, but also for myself and my team, I wanted to do the things that these bosses, or the opposite to the bosses that I had. So I think the inspiration is come from there. But I meet so many women and non-binary people in technology and men in tech, like, that are just so inspiring. Like, I love technology. I love what it can do to healthcare, poverty. Like, I see all of these world issues that technology is trying to solve, and people are building solutions using technology trying to solve these huge issues. And I think the tech for good element of technology is something that really inspires me as well.
And in terms of how you went about, I'm sorry, I'm intrigued by this, but in terms of how you went about building your business, I mean, did you just literally knock on doors and say to people, do you recognize this situation? Can I help you? Did a lot of companies go, well, that doesn't apply? I mean, I'm just intrigued as to how you pointed out politely, if you like, to companies, you don't employ enough women, ladies, and I'm going to help you sort that. I mean, how did you approach people, I suppose?
First of all, we grew a really loyal Twitter following. So through Liverpool Girl Geeks, so not InnovateHer now, we launched on Twitter. And it was that time when I was talking before about Twitter being utilised for businesses and communities. I think I witnessed that through Liverpool Girl Geeks. It grew a really loyal following quite quickly. And we had a community then of women either training to be in technology or working in technology that followed us because they liked what we were doing. So then when we thought about monetizing it and getting businesses involved, we created a service for business saying, we know that you've got a diversity issue, or it goes broader than that. There's a talent issue, there's a digital and tech pipeline issue. We know that you've got this. Now we've got a community of women working in technology or trained to be in technology that you could utilize if you fund us and our work. So that's how we went about it in the early days. And now we have a full program of services that we offer to businesses where we help them with their equality, diversity and inclusion. But all of that money, as we're a social enterprise, goes into funding schools to have the programs for free. So we have a whole package of them now, which is like a really solid offering. But back then it was like, come and support us, utilize our network, our social media presence and our events, come and talk to these people and offer them jobs. And then we saw a rise then in the companies that we working with in terms of their diversity stats, which then spoke for itself, and we were able to create like case studies and stuff from there.
In terms of your own experience and the certainly in the early days, then the network that you established, I mean, did you amongst yourselves find out you had sort of common challenges being women in the workplace? Was it simply a case that you were in a minority and you just felt a bit sort of isolated and neglected, or were there more sort of deeper issues than that, or just perhaps describe that landscape that people experienced and how you've helped address it, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's multiple issues. When we started this work, we just seen the percentage and we were like, right, that's bad, but then what's behind that? So one of the things that we recognized quite quickly, specifically when we were working with young people in schools, is that, and I'm generalizing, teachers and parents of girls tended to not tell them about opportunities within technology. So there was a lot of stereotypes happening. So the boys in schools would get talked to about innovation, technology, science, anything to do with STEM. But the girls were talked to about nursing, teaching, hairdressing, all of the stereotypical things that girls were meant to do. So that was like one of the original issues that we uncovered, that we felt just went back years and years and years. So we decided to work with young people from the age of 13, before they picked their GCSEs, before they were succumb to these stereotypes, even though it does happen way before then. And then what we saw was if they did pick a tech related GCSE, then there was a drop off after school, either at university or within the industry itself. And there's been so many reasons for that as well. So there's issues around parental leave, and that one parent gets more money than the other one in terms of maternity pay and paternity pay. A lot of new mums were leaving the tech industry. I think the stat is over 50% of mid-career women leave the tech industry due to the motherhood penalty, or because they weren't getting paid the same as their male colleagues. There's a huge gender pay gap issue that I'm sure we can talk about for hours, but there's also like a bro culture in a lot of offices, in the big offices in technology, which just isn't flexible or inclusive to other genders. So yeah, we saw, once we did that research, once we found that stat and we delved into it, and when we spoke to people working within the industry, these are the types of things people were telling us. And some people would, because we'd created this amazing community, people would then come to us with them kind of issues and then talk about them with peers within that community. So they felt like they were getting a bit of a support network through it. So yeah. there's a lot going on in the background.
And in terms of when you started to where you are now, I mean, clearly the work you've done, I'm sure, has made a massive difference. But do you think, in general, the sort of diversity landscape has improved? I suspect we'd all agree that it's got a way to go. But do you like to think, at least from where you came into the industry, you can recognise that things have got somewhat better?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely have. We're just about to launch our social impact report in a couple of weeks. And within that, we have to look at our own data and then other people's data. And Tech Nation reported earlier this year that now the amount of females working in technology is 26%, which last year was 19%. So that's a massive uplift. But then a report came out yesterday that only 0.8% of the tech workforce is filled by Black women. So actually, even if that 26% is true, and we have had that much of an uplift, who are these people working in technology? We're still not seeing fair representation of who is in the UK in this industry. So there's still so much work to be done, but I can't say that it hasn't improved. Like, that's such an amazing stat, and I would hope that InnovateHer has had some part or have contributed to that uplift. We're still seeing hearing so many stories about organizations and people that work for them that have had a sexist experience, for example. You can see all of that on social media, but with our partners, we have 25 partners who support us, from huge organizations to really small ones. And we're seeing some amazing impact there, which you can read in the social impact report. But because they're doing the work with us, we do a diversity and inclusion health check when they sign up, and we do that every single year to benchmark where they're at. And because they are committed and they are going on the training courses, they are updating their policies, they are doing lots of work with the culture, we're seeing an improvement in diversity within those companies. So I'm so hopeful. People are talking about it now. People weren't talking about it as much when I first started this. Businesses are putting it on their agenda, they're putting a budget behind it. We need more businesses to do that. We can't do what we do and support the next generation without more businesses supporting us, but it is on the agenda, and directors, CEOs and senior leaders are definitely seeing how it can benefit the business. I think that's the difference that we need to really see. It can't just be something that they do for a nice to have, like a CSR thing, which we're often put in that bucket. Actually, if you have a more diverse workforce, you are going to be more profitable, you're going to be more productive, and that is proven, and there's data out there that says that. So that's why people should do it, and hopefully we get to a place where it gets put into operational and financial budgets rather than the CSR. I think I rambled on. I answered a few things there, but getting passionate about it.
Yeah. And in terms of what more needs to be done, I mean, you mentioned the pay gap. I mean, it seems extraordinary in this day and age that two people can do the same job and be paid somewhat different salaries. That just seems plain unfair. Yeah. But that's I guess a simple thing that can be addressed. But what else do you think needs to be done? I mean, I'm wondering, for example, a lot of companies maybe feel a bit embarrassed and therefore don't want to sort of acknowledge they've got a problem, because then it opens maybe a whole can of worms. What sort of things are maybe stopping more progress, and what things need to be done, if you can cover some of that maybe?
Yeah, I think acknowledgement is so key, and I hope that us as InnovateHer, we don't judge. So someone can come to us with no women in the company, as long as the directors, I think it's really important that the directors, the CEO, the senior leadership team buys into it. What we see a lot of is this issue being given to someone on the side of their job. this is a full-time job or a team if you've got the budget to try and solve, or work with someone like InnovateHer or another organization to help you. But it definitely needs to be acknowledged by that senior leadership team. There needs to be budget going towards it, and it can't be given to one person to try and solve who's passionate about it in the industry. So I think that's really fair to say. I think the salaries, definitely, you mentioned them, definitely need looking at. And one of the things that we suggest people do is actually stating the salary. So not putting a window, or a lot of companies don't even show the salaries. There's a campaign on Twitter called Show the Salary, actually, which is a really good campaign, and it takes the negotiation out of it. It's like, this is what it is, no matter who you are, this is what you're going to get paid, because women generally don't negotiate as hard as men, and then that's where you see the disparity in pay. So that's something that businesses could do. We're still seeing very low numbers of females taking tech-related GCSEs and A-levels, which is what we're trying to tackle. So we need more support to fund more schools in this space, so that we've got a pipeline of technical talent ready and waiting for the next generation. I think when we talk to organisations, they want quick fixes. Now, that 26% that I said before, the rise is amazing, but is that going to be the same next year? We don't know, because we're not seeing enough people get trained at the lower stages in life in schools. So there's so much more work needs to be done there, and we need to be looking at long-term talent strategies to actually, I think, see the difference. There's also so many tech jobs, as you'll know, out there, and that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And if it grows at the rate it is, that stat around how many females in tech is more likely to go down if we don't support the next generation. So I think I'd like to see that. I think more support for the next generation, definitely. And yeah, looking at culture, salaries, inclusive environments, not just looking at numbers. I don't think it's fair to say we want everyone to have 50% women, 50% men in a business. That's definitely not going to happen. We just want to make sure that the environment's inclusive for anyone, no matter what background they're from, what identity they are, they all feel comfortable in that organisation. And then the stats won't matter so much, I think. So.
And in terms of that sort of digital awareness, particularly at the sort of younger age in education, I mean, the government, I don't want to get into politics because that's a dangerous subject, but
yeah,
certainly I get a lot of press releases, with the government telling me all these marvelous digital things they are doing. But do you think it sounds as if there's a bit of a gap in the education system, and maybe even when IT is pretty much compulsory for people, it's still being perhaps taught in a bit of a dried academic way, as opposed to related to all the exciting things that can be done with it in so many walks of life. Do you think that's a bit of a gap that needs addressing? And I don't know, do you get involved in any sort of government or public sector initiatives? Or
we'd love to. I mean, I'd love to see our platform being embedded into the school system, obviously with funding from the government. But I think we're trying to mitigate that with our programs. But from what I can see, none of it is compulsory yet, apart from in primary. So in primary, like, coding's on the curriculum. But when you get to year 8, when you need to pick your GCSEs, it's a choice, and you can choose between design technology, computer science, product design, if the schools offer it. Now that's a separate issue, because only 40% of schools in the UK offer computer science, because they can't get the teaching facility for it. So it's compulsory. So the schools are having a huge challenge. It's not compulsory. The schools are having a challenge getting people on the courses and themselves. So we're trying to make them more inspiring. However, we can't do that because we've got no access to the curriculum. Like you said, some of it could be dry. The teacher might not fully understand what they're teaching. They're not bringing real life concepts to life. They're not linking it to organizations that are out there, and that's where InnovateHer helps teachers and schools to bring it to life. But we're only in 50 schools across the UK. There's so much more of us that needs to be done. But also on that note is we see a lot of this government-led programs in the south, but not so much in the north of the UK. So I think it's being utilised in pockets, but more needs to be done in areas more spread across the UK. I think government could do a lot more and put a lot more funding towards it. But yeah, I won't say any more on that.
No. And in terms of, because I mean, hardly a week passes by without me getting some press release or survey saying that, you know, people are leaving the industry, you know, retiring, and they're not, you know, we haven't got new. Sort of anecdotally, or do you really worry that there just aren't, you know, clearly women in IT are underrepresented, but just more generally, if we're not careful, that there's going to be a massive sort of digital skills deficit, and at a time when, you know, we're all going digital and it's so important on a global level, and yet we just don't have enough, you know, skilled people now, and even more so perhaps in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the reasons why we exist. I think it was 2020 and 100,000 jobs in the UK in technology got unfilled, but I don't know what I bet the stat has gone way up than that number. But you're seeing like industries like cybersecurity, for example, and the space industry. We've just done a whole space campaign. So the space industry as well has so many jobs within it now. And cyber's becoming, you know, embedded in every business. We're not teaching any cyber skills in schools. Yeah, we're teaching a little bit of coding and a little bit of technology. But we're not teaching them how to use it in terms of safety. So when you look at areas like that, I'm really concerned that we just aren't doing enough in schools to fill that gap, no matter the gender. When we talk to a young person, they can't tell us what cybersecurity is. Sometimes they say, why should I learn technology? Why should I pick it at GCSE? What am I going to get out of that? And you're like, the teachers and people around them just aren't telling them about the absolute necessity, I can't say that word, of why it's important. Like, they're gonna get left behind as well. These young people are gonna get left behind if they don't acquire some digital and technology skills, because every single job now requires it. So yeah, I am very concerned, and particularly around some of the industries that are coming out of technology now, like cyber AI. I think there's going to be there is real concern, and I bet in these businesses as well, they are going to see huge gaps over the next few years.
Okay, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. You give some brilliant insights. So perhaps in finishing, I mean, if there were one or two things that you think are critically important that you'd recommend, or you think need to happen to improve the situation, whether that's from the purely the diversity angle, or just more generally getting, you know, digital skills to be, you know, understood, the importance of them to be understood, what kind of things do you think need to be done?
I think organisations need to put more budget towards ED&I. I think they need to put it on top of their agenda. I think they need to consider it when they're considering all of their financial decisions and budgeting over the next few years. That needs to be a priority. I think the government definitely need to support schools more. We've just come out of, or we're coming out of a huge pandemic, which has caused so much disruption in schools. Kids are already left behind. How are we gonna support them, but also the tech industry, by building these skills? There's just not enough support and training for teachers in schools at the moment, so I'd love to see that. I'd love to see more support as well for parents. There was a march yesterday called March of the Mummies in London and around the UK, and they were talking or marching about the cost of childcare. And I supported that because the stat I mentioned before, around 50% of women leaving technology at midpoint in their career. One of the reasons of that is the cost of childcare. So if we had affordable childcare, more women would go back to work. That would be better for the economy, and the tech industry would massively thrive off that. So that last point, I think, should be a really easy consideration from the government to say, yes, this is obviously something that would make a huge difference. Yeah, I'd say that those three things. I think that last one I'm very passionate about at the moment, because I just think it's a no-brainer. But yeah, them three things.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. It's been really enjoyable to chat to you, and thanks for giving up your time. So Chelsea, thanks again.
You too. Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you.